don't know. Who cares? So I decided that from now on, the titles that I give the episodes of the show are gonna either be movie lines or song lyrics.
Oh, okay.
Because I just feel like, I'm always trying to give like creative names to, my episodes of my show and whatnot
Yeah.
too. And I just feel like lately some of the, I haven't been able to come up with good names for some of our episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so the last episode, I don't know if you saw, was So Glad You Could Make It, because, I took that out of that whole song.
Right.
And then the episode before that was The Cookie Stand Is Not Part of the Food Court.
Yeah, but that's
So
Mallrats.
exactly, Mallrats. So, because we were talking about shopping malls.
Oh, I see. I see. Do
Yeah.
you like Kevin Smith, or did you like Kevin Smith at any point?
So I'm trying to think if I have any reason to say no. I don't think so. Yeah, no, yeah, yes, I like Kevin Smith. Yes.
Okay. I mean,
And
did you see
I saw
Clark?
Clerks I saw Clerks when I was working at Radio Shack, which was pretty
Oh yeah.
perfect. I mean, I didn't work at a convenience store, but I
Mm-hmm.
worked retail anyway. And yeah, actually, I can't remember if I ever told the story on my show or not, but Kevin Smith, anybody that enjoys my show can kind of thank Kevin Smith for that, because he got me back into video games.
Is it because of playing hockey or no?
Yeah.
In
Yeah. Oh, I did tell that story then.
Oh
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
I don't remember. You can go ahead and tell it
Oh,
again.
well, it's just a quick story, but it's just like, so I watched, so I kind of like wandered away from video games like in the mid 90s,
Mm-hmm.
like I had my Genesis, but I was kind of like, well, that was getting towards the end of its lifespan.
Right.
And, I had a computer that I did a lot of gaming on, but like it was like a 386 and it didn't have, like a 3D card in it or anything. So at some point, I didn't even have a CD-ROM drive. So at some point, I couldn't play any of the new games that were coming out.
Mm-hmm.
So like I would still play the games that I already had on the computer, but I couldn't play any new stuff. And I just graduated high school, and maybe I just got kind of more into like hanging out with my friends and
Yeah, absolutely.
playing the guitar and smoking packs of cigarettes and all that kind of stupid stuff.
Yeah.
And so I even gave away my Sega Genesis. Oh, that happened later, actually, though. That happened later. Yeah, that was never mind.
That
I
was
gave away my
that
Sega
was your
Genesis.
childhood system that you gave away.
Yes, but I gave that away after I got my PlayStation. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. I still had my Sega Genesis, but I didn't play it. And then I watched Clerks, and then I watched Mallrats,
Mm-hmm.
and then Chasing Amy came out.
Yeah.
And so this probably would have been, I didn't look it up. I don't know when Chasing Amy came out, but it has to have been like late winter, early spring of like 97.
Right.
So my friend Chris and I went and saw Chasing Amy, and
In the theater.
yes. In fact, we had to drive to the next town over because that's the only theater, which is funny because we lived in the bigger city and we had to drive to a smaller town because that's the only theater in the area that was showing Chasing Amy. And if you'll remember, the two main characters, Ben Affleck's character and Jason Lee's character, I don't think they were. Maybe this wasn't clear. Were they like roommates, or I don't know if this was just an office where they did
just
all
had
the
an
comics,
office.
or if
Yeah.
they also lived there. But anyway, they had a Model 2 Sega Genesis.
Oh.
And they would play whatever NHL game, maybe like 96 or something. Because, famously, Mallrats, Jason Lee's character, which is confusing because like these movies all take place in the same like universe. What is it called? Like the Viewist universe or something.
Yep.
But then you'll have the same actor playing different.
Yeah.
But whatever. I mean, I don't care. But I'm saying so. Jason Lee's character in Mallrats has a Sega Saturn in his bedroom, right?
He has a
And he's
Saturn?
playing like in Mallrats, it's a Saturn, and he's playing like Sega. Whatever the first party was, like Sega All Star Hockey or whatever.
Okay. See, I always
NHL
get it
All-Star
messed up in my
Hockey.
mind because
Right.
they're
Yeah.
playing NHL '94 in swingers. That's like you can make.
Well, that was
Gretzky's
NHLPA '93.
Oh. Okay. Well, either way, but that's the one. Is like you can make this. I'm gonna make Gretzky's head bleed.
Right.
Okay.
Anyway, so Mallrats, Sega Saturn, and then for whatever reason, Chasing Amy, Genesis, and it was a Model 2 Genesis, and they would play. Based on when the movie was shot, it was probably like NHL '95 or '96, I
Right.
guess. But anyway, I saw that, and for some reason, I think that and still having the Mallrats thing in my head, I was like, that looks kind of like fun. I'd never owned a hockey video game. I'm like, I'm gonna go get, because I still had my Genesis,
Mm-hmm.
and so I went down to KB Toys and I'm just gonna go get whatever the latest NHL game is, and at that point, NHL '97 was out. So I bought that, and I got really into playing. I was like, this is pretty fun. I got into playing that. I started hanging out with this guy that I met, and we became like fast friends. We're both into video games. We would play the game together, and then it was because of that that I ended up going out and buying a PlayStation.
Oh, okay.
And one of the first games I bought for the PlayStation was the NHL '97 that came out for PlayStation, which is a very different game.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if you remember this, but you could return games to KB Toys. Like you could buy a brand new game, and as long as you kept it in perfect condition,
Mm-hmm.
you had like 30 days or something that you could return the game.
I didn't realize
If you
that KB
decided.
Toys had that because I know the Electronics Boutique it was like 10 days, and you could return it even if you didn't like it, you could return
Yeah, that's
it.
what I'm saying. Yeah, they had
Okay.
the same thing at KB, and so
So
I
it must have
returned
been
it.
competition thing.
I guess so, but
So you
yeah, I don't know.
returned
That's
it.
the end of the story. But that got me. I got that PlayStation, and I was like 100% like on like the PlayStation train. Like I
Yeah.
loved that system. Like, because it was the first time I'd ever had a video game system where I was like an adult and I had a job, and
Yeah.
so like
And you're like,
you
I can
know
buy anything I want.
yeah, like I subscribed to PSM magazine,
Mm-hmm.
and then I would see a game, like they would review a game that, I thought looked good and they gave it a good score, and I could just go to the store and just buy it. I didn't have to like, ask anybody to get it for me. It was great.
Yeah.
That was all thanks to Kevin Smith, is my point.
That's great. I mean, I really like Kevin Smith. I really like his first 4 movies, and then I felt like things kind of changed in that he.
Sorry, just remind me, please,
So
what's number
it's
4?
Clerks,
Yeah.
Mallrats Chasing Amy, and Dogma.
Okay.
And I love those movies. I find them even now like infinitely rewatchable. But
Mhm.
it feels like after that. So what was after Dogma? I don't remember what he did after Dogma.
I don't either.
Is that with maybe it wasn't Zach and Miri. Maybe it was, or no, it's Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back
Okay.
after Dogma, and I felt like something with that it seemed like he tried to be gross for the sake of like trying to one up himself constantly, of
Yeah.
like getting grosser to like trying to be so gross that he would like twist things around to make it so never felt like kind of natural anymore.
Yeah.
And that's
Do you feel
something.
like in some ways it turned into like he turned his movies into like parodies of themselves?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Because I mean you look at Dogma, which I think is a great movie, and there's funny stuff in that, but it shows him going in a direction that I wish that he had kind of continued down, where it's like here's this bigger story, and
Yeah.
we're gonna put these I guess like these like normal people like into these stories, which I
Yeah.
thought was kind of fun. And when after doing like following that with Strike Back, it just didn't have the same kind of feeling for me, and it just felt like he was trying to be gross for the sake of being gross instead of it just feeling naturally part of the conversation, which I thought it did previous to that. Although I'm sure there's
Yeah.
plenty of people out there who'd be like, well, what about this conversation? Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But there's something about it that just like it was lost on me, and that continued on through like all his other movies. Like with Clerks 2, like the whole like donkey show part in Clerks 2, I was just like, come on, like it just feels like we're gonna put something real like out there and gross in there just to do it.
Yeah.
And it's just like what's
I
like
mean,
the most like out of left field thing that we could think of that's like gross but would be funny.
yeah.
And it didn't have the same weight for it. And like have you seen Clerks 3 yet?
No, not yet.
Okay. Well, I mean, I felt like that it kind of walks a little bit of that, like walks a lot of that back.
That's nice, I guess. I mean, as somebody who like also, I'm not a filmmaker or whatever, but I would say that just because of my own experiences, I feel more hesitant to criticize other creative people, right?
Yes.
Because it's like you do
Absolutely.
whatever if that's what you want to do, you should do it. The
Totally.
only thing I would say, I think, is that I think that Kevin Smith is a good writer and a good storyteller and
Hmm.
a competent filmmaker. And I would like to see him more like branch out more. And like, I get that it's really easy to keep making, movies that are in that universe
Yeah. Oh yeah.
because you've got an established audience that like is going to go see like any of that stuff. But at the same
Which he
time, I think it's
definitely
like,
does have. You know,
yes, but I'm saying like I would like to see other like, make something completely new. It's like,
well, he tried that and then it didn't. He just
yeah,
like had
I
horrible
know.
experiences
Yeah, I
every
get that.
time. And like, but I agree. Like
Yeah.
I
I'm not saying he should do that. I'm just saying I would like, just personally as a, fan of his, it's like, come up with some new characters and do something completely different that doesn't
well, I mean,
take place in,
did you ever see Red State, like his horror movie,
no,
or
but
like?
as we've discussed before, I'm not into horror movies.
But it's kind of an interesting movie, and you should check it out because it's about like it's kind of relevant to our world today, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
And he did that, and then it was just like nobody really cared, and then he had like apparently a really awful experience making Cop Out, which is that
Hmm.
movie he did with like Tracy Morgan and Bruce Willis,
Yeah.
and that was not a good experience. And then like I guess he's like really struggled since
Yeah.
then.
I mean, I get that. If you say, well, I tried multiple times and I didn't enjoy the experience, then,
Hmm.
hey, then go back to making,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
there's nothing wrong with that.
right.
Um,
But
so
like those first four I think are complete classics, and I can
yeah,
go back and watch them, even though I'm sure there's people that would say that they haven't aged well or whatever. But it's like it's
yeah.
it's of a time,
Oh,
which
100%.
yeah.
Yeah. So you tell me, is it, because, the last thing I want to do is be annoying. But I also don't want to sound like, for some reason, I'm very self-conscious about sounding like pretentious, like,
That's a good
like
quality
even
to
the whole
have, though. I
thing
mean,
with,
you don't want to.
well, cause it's like, I can't stand it, if you see certain qualities in other people and you realize, ooh, I don't want to come off that way because I don't appreciate that quality in you, not you, but another you.
Hmm.
And so like, I can't, people who act pretentious and can only talk about themselves is like, and so I don't want to sound that way. And so it's like the thing, even just when I mentioned that, like, oh, I got rid of my TV is just like, oh God, I sound like one of those people. Um,
Yeah,
which I didn't mean to, but it's just like, I got rid of my TV. But, so
and you're like,
all
oh,
that is to
I don't
say,
eat
like,
meat, right? Like
right.
that's
Yeah.
like
Or like they say about like, how do you know if somebody does CrossFit?
exactly. They'll tell you.
Because they tell you.
How do you know if
Um,
somebody doesn't have a TV? They'll tell you.
well, kind of. Yeah.
I don't watch TV. I don't have one in my house.
I
I mean,
remember there used to be this,
it's kind of it's.
there used
I
to be
guess
this
it's
grad
true.
student. Yeah. There was this grad student that worked in my lab, and it turned into like a running joke because like he was in the Peace Corps before he went to grad school.
Mm.
And one thing I've learned, I think I've worked or been around a couple people that were in the Peace Corps, and one thing I've seemingly learned is that if you served in the Peace Corps, you're going to make sure that everybody knows about it and that it's in every conversation you ever have. And so it turned into this thing, and it's funny because like he was like self-aware enough to understand what I was doing, but he still wouldn't stop. Anytime he would bring up the Peace Corps, I'd be like, "Oh, you were in the Peace Corps?" And then he would kind of laugh, and it's like, you see, I'm trying to point out to you that you work it into like every conversation.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, the halal trailer is here today. Oh, where I had really good halal was in North Africa when I was in the Peace Corps. It's like, okay, thank you. Anyway, the whole reason I'm bringing that up is just that, like, I want, because now I'm reading more books and I would like to be able to say, hey, I read this book, but it's like, I don't want to sound like, oh, look at Mr. Books over here. And I wouldn't say it if it was just any book, but because you are the one that brought this book up, I read About a Boy.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So now
Uh,
you're like all in on the Nick Hornby train at this point.
well, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to read any more of it. It was just like I was at
It's not
this,
as good as High Fidelity.
there's this bookstore where It's like a thrift store, but only for books, kind of. Like it's like it's run by like the Friends of the Library, right? So
Okay.
if you donate books to the library, the books end up, they go through them and pick out, like if it's like crappy stuff, probably
Yeah.
they get rid of it. But like they're not going to have romance novels and stuff. But all those books end up going to the shop, like in the middle of downtown, and they, it's like a paperback book is like $3 or $4 or
Yeah.
something. But I mean, if you go in there, it's set up like a bookstore, and everything is like organized by genre and whatnot. And so I was just in there, like, looking for books, and I was looking through the fiction, and I was like, oh, let me see if they have any Nick Hornby
Hmm.
books. And they happened to have a copy of About a Boy, and it was like $4, and so I just figured, hey, I'll get that.
Yeah. I
So
mean, they're easy reads, I guess.
yes, absolutely, and they're not very long, and like, I mean, yeah, you could read it in a day easily if you don't have children or some other thing, bothering you. But I don't even really have anything big to say about it. It was just like, since you brought up About a Boy, I read it.
Hmm.
Is it as good? No, but it was still good. I
Yeah.
enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It's funny because you could see, it's almost like it was the same character, like it's
Yeah.
not obviously, but it's like you could totally see that being,
Which is
you
him,
know,
probably.
the high fidelity guy. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think there's probably a lot of, I mean, probably most authors do that, put a lot of themselves
Yeah. Because I
into the
mean, that's
book.
what they
So
know. Like it's got. I
yeah.
feel like it's got to be really hard to just make up a complete character without any kind of like self uh, projecting, I guess, into
I mean,
that
it's got
character.
to either be you or someone right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I also read The Hunt for Red October.
Oh, I heard you talking about. Did you talk about that recently? The movie about that, or
I
maybe it
thought,
was
didn't we
somebody
talk
else.
about it on the show? I thought we did.
We may have
Maybe
talked
we
about it on
did.
the
Maybe we
show,
didn't.
and it's funny. We did, yeah. You talked about like the zoom into the mouth going from speaking Russian to English.
Yeah, maybe.
Because you
I don't know.
talked about that. I saw it was on Netflix and I started watching. I fell asleep though because I was watching it in bed. Like
yeah,
I can't do like anything like playing games or watching TV like in bed. Like I just fall asleep. I can't help it.
yeah, that's fair. Anyway, I just really, I enjoyed it. It's good. It's a
How
long book. I read it in like 48 hours too, because I was just so into it. Like
really?
I didn't do anything else that weekend.
That's
Like I bought it
is
on a
it Tom
Friday night,
Clancy?
and I was, what's it? Yeah, yeah. It was Tom Clancy's first book.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, I mean, have you seen all the? I've not watched like the Jack Ryan show
No,
at all, but I mean,
no.
would you say that Alec Baldwin is a better Jack Ryan than Harrison Ford was?
I can't even say because I've only ever seen Hunt for Red October, because
Okay.
I don't. But because to me, like Alec Baldwin
Like
is
a young,
Jack Ryan.
yeah,
Like I can't. So I don't even want to watch. And I love Harrison Ford. I mean, who
mhm,
doesn't?
right.
But I just, to me that was like Alec Baldwin's first starring role in a movie. Like,
Mhm.
I wish he had kept going with that, but I understand why. Probably he didn't want to get typecast.
Right.
But so I don't really have any interest in watching the other movies, but I would like to read the other books. But then, like, I went to a bookstore, just thinking in my head, like, I'm gonna go in there and like, buy, like, okay, that was Tom Clancy's first Jack Ryan novel. I'm gonna go buy the second one.
Hmm.
You know. And then I'm like, okay, I don't know which one's the second one. So I'm literally in the bookstore looking at the shelf, and I get my phone out
Hmm.
just to look it up. Okay, what's number two or whatever, thinking that that's simple. But it's like, of course, it's not simple. It's like, well, the next book that he wrote was this, but it's like, if you want to read the Jack Ryan books in order, like Hunt for October is actually like the fourth one, because then, like, later Tom Clancy wrote some books that took
Hmm.
place before that. And like, it was like so complicated. I just didn't buy anything. Like, I don't, this is too much.
I get that. I get that. It's overcomplicated and you don't want to like waste your time trying to figure it out. And then like you always have that it creates a problem when you want to read all this stuff because it's like, well, I don't know if I should read them in like release order or like, chronological order of like when they take place. It's too
Yeah,
much
that's
effort to like do something that should be simple.
exactly.
So,
Yes. And
I
that's
mean,
why I just said, never mind.
right. Like there's a game series, Yakuza, that
Hmm.
I played the most recent one, and then which is actually like the seventh game,
Okay.
and then people are like, oh, well, you should go back and, if you want to start from the beginning, you should play Yakuza 0, which like came out between 5 and 6. I'm like, what? I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go back and I'm going to play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 0, then
Yeah.
6.
Yes.
I'm just gonna stick with release order stuff from now on, because like you will never run into things that was how do I want to say this? You won't run into anything playing in that order that was not intended, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
Like in playing like the prequel stuff might like ruin things that'll come later anyways, or like I don't really care
Yeah.
about these relationships, and it's cool like going back to 0 after 5
Yeah.
and being like, oh, well, that's kind of like adds some context to this conversation, because that's how it was
Yes.
created in the first place, is to like add
Yeah.
context to these conversations that you've already experienced.
Yeah. So I thought about like, just everything you just said, I thought about just doing that. Like, I'm just going to read these books in the order they were written.
Mm-hmm.
But that gets to my second issue, which is like, so this Hunt for October book is like, it's like 650 pages. Like it's pretty, and the thing, but it's like it's like a trade paperback. Like if
Yeah.
you just go to the one that you can get that's like still in print or whatever. And so it's not very big, like height and width or whatever. So it's this really thick, small book, and it's very hard to hold, if that makes sense. Like it's uncomfortable
Yeah.
trying to read it. And I think the next book was like Patriot Games, and it's like even thicker because it's still like I would rather go to a used bookstore and try to buy like an older copy or a hardcover where it's like a bigger book,
Yeah.
so it doesn't have to be as many pages. Because like I don't want to read for reasons we've already discussed. I don't want to read like an ebook or whatever. But and the other thing is I've got a whole stack of other books to read. So like whatever.
So let me ask you a question. When you were, when was the last time you watched the Hunt for Red October movie?
Oh, like a couple weeks ago.
Okay. So when you
it was one of those things. It was one of those things like we talked about last time when I turned on Napoleon Dynamite,
right?
Because I was just looking for something to put on while I was doing something,
right?
Like a week before that, I did the exact same thing.
Okay.
But it was before I read the book.
Okay. So let me ask you this: when you were reading that book, did you have the music from the movie playing in your head the whole time?
No, but that would have been cool. In fact, what would have been really cool is if you just bought the soundtrack
and just
had it playing.
Because that movie, because Hunt for Red October has a really great soundtrack to it.
It does. It's a very good soundtrack. Yeah.
And like I very rarely read books, but when I read something that is like been adapted and it has like a good soundtrack, it'll always be in my head. Like when I read when I was in high school and I read Jurassic Park. Like I had the music in my head the whole time.
Oh yeah, very good. That was John Williams, though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, okay. So, oh, by the way, you're listening to episode 8 of Here's My Question for You.
I mean, I think it would be funny eventually we get to the point where you don't even say it and you said you've been listening to episode 8, or
yes, I could. We might get to that point. Yeah.
Or like you're listening to episode 8 and we're done.
Yeah. So, unless you had something specific that you wanted to discuss,
I don't.
Well, good. I have some very exciting news for you. We have, I don't want to say a pile. We have enough emails that we're not going to even be able to read them all.
Oh.
In one episode. And I I remember last time I even brought up that maybe there was an email, your face like lit up. So, so I thought if you wanted to, we could. I have got it open here in front of me. I have not looked at them yet. I'm following the rules.
Okay.
And I just figured I'll start with the one that we got first, and we can work our way.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So this first email we got on November 21st, and it comes from I don't want to give people's last names really, but so it comes from a guy named Daryl. So
okay.
I don't know if there's a guy named Daryl watches my show. I don't know if it's the same Daryl, but in either case, hi Daryl. He says, do you have any nostalgic memories of any really strange independent stores or shops and any items they sold there?
Independent stores. That's
I'm guessing maybe that's because we were talking about, you had asked me about, recollections of like stores that aren't around anymore. But we were really talking about like chains, Toys R Us and KB and Radio Shack. So I think basically what he's asking is, do you have any memories like that? But it's like an independent store.
I mean, I wouldn't say I think of certain things, but I'm not sure if I think of them as being like nostalgic, but like they just stick in my mind. You know, like the mall that I would go to growing up had some like locally owned stores in there, as they should, you know. And there was a place called Blue Danube Gifts that all they had. Well, they had a lot of stuff. It was like all like crystal stuff. Like they had these like statues of dragons, like holding a crystal and stuff like that. You know what I'm talking about?
We had a store just like that, not called that, but I'm saying there was a store just like that in my mall that sold that kind of, crystal dragons and
Like
whatnot.
you know, who makes those things? And like, are they only making them to end up in these kind of stores?
Probably, yeah.
And do they still exist? Are they still like what is like pewter statues? Is like a
Pewter, yeah.
like I don't even know what pewter is. Is it kind of metal?
Yeah, I think it's
Okay,
like a, amalgam.
kind of like
But
little, I guess like little like not action figures, but like die cast. Is that what it is? Like die cast figures?
yeah, like the little figurines.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because that when that was the first store that kind of came to my mind when I see this question is we had a little shop that sold, it was a game store, but like tabletop games.
Mm.
And, I didn't even really know that those were like a thing because I would have been like in sixth grade. I was probably like 12 years old.
Yeah.
And I remember my best friend Jonathan, he had Ultima, which Ultima?
Ultima 4.
Exodus.
Okay, is that 4?
I think it's 3. Like
Okay.
4 is Quest for the Avatar or
Okay.
whatever. But yeah, it was like the first Ultima that came out on the NES. 'Cause
Mhm.
that's how he had it, was on the NES. And I think that was like probably our first exposure to sort of that kind of like fantasy world, you know?
Right.
That sort of Dungeons and Dragons, Lord of the Rings kind of, world. And so we thought that was pretty cool. And I remember one day I went over to his house and he had like these little lead figures that, were like the kind of, creatures and whatnot that you would see in Ultima. I thought, whoa, those are like really cool.
Hmm.
And so he told me like where he got them. It's like I went over there and I got some too. He was like, like the little like, inch and a half tall, like little die cast.
Yeah.
We called them lead figures. They were not actually made of lead for I think
Right.
safety reasons, but I had like this cool like skeleton warrior with like a sword and a shield.
And
And
they
I
didn't
forgot I
have
had a
like
few,
adjustable
but
joints or anything like that. They were just like
no,
a
no, 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 no. But you were
like full
supposed to
statues.
paint them,
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
like because they sold all the supplies there for you to paint it. I forgot what that there's that popular game
Not like
that people
Warhammer.
play.
Is that Warhammer?
Yeah, yeah, Warhammer. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think Warhammer players are way more into like painting all because I think you have to bring the figures with you to. I
Right.
don't know how Warhammer is played at all, but
Yeah.
with like Dungeons and Dragons, like those little figures are cool to have, but you don't actually like use them for anything, as far as I know.
Yeah. They're
But I've
just a cool
also
thing
never
to
played.
collect. And just like,
Yes.
it gives you can imagine them when you are playing, I guess. And like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm going to here's like what this monster looks like. There's
Yeah.
there's a place that's like close to here that just opened up that sells a lot of these things, and they sell like 3D printed ones that they like make on the spot, and then you can buy them and paint them and stuff like that.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, I wish I liked 3D printed stuff better, or else I would
Well, I mean,
get more into
it's
that.
the
But
quality's improving.
yeah,
But anyway, like I didn't know, like I went into the store and it's like, yeah, there was like a little wall where they had a bunch of lead figures, and that was kind of the main thing I was looking at. But it was more like just looking around the store, and there were like they had a little bit of just your standard board games, maybe like nicer editions of them.
yeah,
But the vast majority of the store were either boxed, tabletop like war games, or like tons of books for all these different pencil and paper role playing games. Like I remember I saw Shadowrun in there, and of course that
oh,
was way
cool,
before
yeah,
you know Shadowrun came out. In fact, I think I might have even bought because I'd go in there to have a few bucks, and so you could go look through like the clearance bin,
yeah,
and you would buy stuff even though like I didn't have that game. So what was I going to do with that book? But it just looked neat.
yeah. Well, it had
So you
awesome
just go
covers,
home and just kind of look through it,
or look at the
like as if
pictures.
it were a right, exactly. But anyway, I don't know. That was the first store that I thought, and that store unfortunately is gone now. So
Yeah, I think most of these stores are
yeah,
probably gone.
but that was a cool question.
Yeah, yeah. I hadn't thought about Blue Danube gifts until you read that email. And it's funny because that store, like last time I was there, it became a Spencer's Gifts, which I guess makes sense. I can't believe Spencer
Yeah.
Gifts is still around, to be honest.
I mean, it's been so long since I've been in a mall that I
Yeah.
don't even know what's there anymore.
Yeah. Well, maybe Spencer's Gifts isn't even around anymore. The last time I
Maybe.
was, back where I grew up and I went to the mall, there's still a Spencer's Gifts.
Yeah. When you said Blue Danube, I figured it was going to be all like German stuff, like Lederhosen and beer steins.
Well, maybe they had other stuff, but I remember the dragon
Yeah.
statues.
I mean, same here. You go see something like that because, again, for like the reasons I was just stating, after playing like Dragon Warrior,
Yeah.
if you went into a shop and it was like a crystal dragon with like, little, fake jewels for eyes, and maybe it had like flames coming out of its mouth or something. I mean, it's pretty cool,
It is, and
Yeah.
like I'm glad hopefully they still exist.
Yeah.
I mean, just like they make them and sell them. I'm sure they do.
Yes.
But I don't know where to
Probably.
get that stuff.
I can't remember the last time I saw something like that in a store. Okay, next question.
Yeah, let's do
All
it.
right, so this one comes from Bob. Bob is actually a regular in the Classic Gaming Quarterly Discord.
Nice.
So he says, "Hello, Chris and Corey. I enjoy the new podcast. Here's my question for you." So he gets the format correctly. Oh man, he's got a bunch of questions in here. All right, what obscure or cult classic films would you see if they were re-released in theaters, excluding major hits like Star Wars and Lord of the Rings, which I would not say are cult classics? So like what, like not remade, he's saying, just like if they
Yeah.
re-released it in theater.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure. I'm sure that still falls underneath that same banner. But so before my wife and I got married, we went to see the re-release of Blade Runner at the Ziegfeld Theater in New York, and that's like a single theater. It's like a big auditorium and everything. I don't think it's there anymore though. But we went in there and sat down, and my wife was like, there's a place like this, like where I grew up. We should get married there when we get married. And we did. We went and we got married like on this big like theater stage. So
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I mean, that was like a big like seeing Blade Runner in that kind of atmosphere was really cool, especially since like Blade Runner is a movie that I like, but it took me a long time to be able to make it through the entire movie. Like there's like a sleepiness to that movie. You've seen it, right?
Yeah,
But
I know what you're saying. Yeah,
there's like a
it's
sleepiness
the kind of
to
movie
it.
that can. Yeah,
Well, it makes you just like wants to lull you to sleep, and it took me a long time to make it through that movie.
it's funny because that's when if you describe that, like the first movie that comes to my mind is 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Oh, yeah, that's very much so.
Like that's
yes.
like if you can't fall asleep, put that movie on.
Yeah, yeah, especially since like after the whole like before the dawn of man, like after that, and it's just like shots with people like living their daily life in outer space for like 20 minutes,
Yeah.
and that definitely puts me to sleep.
Yeah, I don't know what I can think of. I mean, we've had, it comes and goes around here, but at various times there'll be people that will show older movies in the movie theaters around here.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know what happens. Maybe someone takes charge and says, okay, like every Wednesday night we're showing an old movie at this theater, and then like something happens or that person loses interest, and then maybe someone else somewhere else does it. Or now there's like one of the sort of the corporate chain movie theaters around here, they're doing it.
Yeah.
But then it's not really like a passion thing. Like the place that was doing it was like kind of what you're describing. It was like an old theater, and they would actually go get the original movie reel and show that.
Yeah,
rather
see,
than just
I
showing
feel
a
like that's what you
digital
got to do.
version.
That's what you
Yeah.
got to do.
But like I remember, I got to see Doctor Strangelove there.
I've never seen it.
Oh, it's such a good movie. So it makes sense. Like the reason I saw that movie originally is, I think we mentioned before that like when I was in school, like, high school and whatnot,
Hmm.
I didn't usually read the books we were supposed to read in English class.
Just
I
not
would
read
just
them.
not read them, and look at how my life turned out. You don't need to read that stuff. But anyway, one of the books we had to read, I think it was a senior in high school, and we had to read Catch 22.
Okay.
And like it instantly became like an all-time favorite book of mine. Like I still think Catch 22 is maybe,
I've never read it.
if you have the right kind of, sense of humor, but also maybe kind of outlook on the world, I think that Catch 22, you just read it and it just completely makes sense to you.
And it's not very long either, right? It's like kind of a shorter.
I mean, it's like a medium, it's no Hunt for October, but I'd say it's probably like 400 pages or something like that, but it's just really good, I think.
Hmm.
And they did turn that into a movie, but I guess my English teacher decided that it wasn't a very good movie. And so instead, after we finished reading the book, we watched Doctor Strangelove
Mm.
because it's kind of in the same vein, I would say.
Okay.
So, I love that movie, and I got to see that on a big screen, and that was pretty cool.
That is really cool. Like that's a
Yeah.
when I lived in New York, there was a couple of theaters that was showing movies with the original print and stuff, and
Hmm.
I went to see a whole bunch of stuff. They would do it like I don't know. It's a lot of movies that I'd seen probably in the theater like as a kid, but when I had a chance to see it, and they're like big movies. Like I went and saw like Raiders of the Lost Ark
Yeah.
in
Oh,
in the theater,
I would
and
love to see that in the theater. Yeah.
yeah, and it was like all like worn out, like beat up and everything. It was cool.
Yeah.
I saw Aliens. Saw the 1986 Transformers the movie,
Oh, that would be cool.
and what else? It, at a time they were like touring like the country or something with like the last known print of this, and it was of this Super Mario Brothers movie.
Oh, wow.
So I got to go see. I went and saw that.
Like the live action with Bob Hoskins?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
And those are the only ones that I can think of off the top of my head. But it was very cool to be able to go and see these, even though they were movies that I'd already seen.
Yeah.
But like I would would absolutely do that again. A few weeks ago, they were showing like a Godzilla movie, like one of the like older ones, like for
Like a
one day.
Japanese Godzilla movie or something.
Yeah, and my son's kind of is like into Godzilla, but the thing is they had this restored print that they were showing for like one day only. It's like a
Hmm.
Fathom event or something like that. And I was like, "Oh, I want to go," but then it's like they're not showing it with the dub. And for me, like Godzilla movies are immensely more enjoyable if they're dubbed. Like I get why there's purists out there that would just like I just want to have the original language, but a big
Yeah.
part of the appeal for me,
Yeah.
growing up on Saturday afternoons when TNT would have their Monster Madness would just be like these dubbed Godzilla movies. So
Yeah.
I have a big soft spot for that. And this Godzilla movie they were showing was just like was not it was not the dub. It was just subtitled. And for one thing, I can't take my son to go see that because he's 7
Right.
and he wouldn't be able to read it fast enough, anyways.
Yeah.
But I was like, I really just wish they would do the dub because
Yeah. I mean, I
I still
get,
think like the dubs are still great to watch. Like there's this.
yeah, I get why they're not doing that, but I also totally understand, and I think I agree with your point of view.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was thinking there's this one line and probably in my favorite Godzilla of the Godzilla movie, like the old ones, Ghidorah the three-headed monster,
Hmm.
and I don't know, something happens and they like discover some signal from outer space, like Planet X or like on Mars or something, and they're like talking to a government official about it, like, what do you think is going to happen? And the dub of it goes, well, I don't think the world is going to explode, but something else might happen. I
That'd
mean,
be a fun job to have, to be just the person that records the dubs. I would do that.
yeah, heck yeah.
Yeah. It's funny that the conversation went there because I see that one of his other questions in this email
Hmm.
is subtitles or dubbing,
Oh, yeah, I mean, I
which
get it.
makes me wonder if you're not going through these emails and not telling me. That's a little suspicious.
Oh no, I don't even have access to the email account. I don't
Oh,
think.
sorry about that.
I mean,
Although,
it's fine.
since you brought that up, I will say that I think it would be really awesome, and I would go check them out if somebody was showing old kung fu movies in the movie theater. Like if I could go see like Master of the Flying Guillotine on a big screen, like that would
Hmm.
be awesome. And I think those are dubbed.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure a lot of them are, but I appreciate the fact that there's subtitled versions available of most of the stuff now, and people think of that as like that's like the real thing. But
Yeah.
I think that growing up watching dubs just makes me enjoy them a lot, even though
It's
like
just
even
part of
like
the
like anime
personality of
dubs.
the,
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
like I have just if I have a choice, if it's something that I've seen before with a dub, I won't watch it without a dub. If it's something I've never seen
Yeah.
and then like I have a choice, like I will like watch it with subtitles because like that's fine. But if it's something I've already seen and I've seen it with the dub, I won't deviate from that.
I get it. So do you want to keep going through this guy's questions, or you want to give somebody else a
Yeah,
shot?
let's give someone else a shot.
All right. Sorry, Bob, but those were good questions.
Well, maybe you should star that one. Maybe we can come back to it sometime.
Oh, all right. There you go. Starred. Next question. This comes from Brian from Retro Mags. So this is like
Oh,
one of the administrators of the Retro Mags website.
nice.
One of my favorites.
Yes, same here.
Yep. He says, "Hey guys, my YouTube subscription list is pretty varied, but focuses on tech and retro gaming. As YouTubers who focus on retro gaming, what are some of the YouTube channels that you subscribe to that are not related to gaming?"
Oh, I like questions like this because I
Me
think
too.
that I bet we kind of watch some of the same people
Think so?
in terms of that. Well, I know that we both watch Pat Finnerty.
Oh,
It's
yes.
like kind of a big inspiration for the existence of this podcast, really. Who is a music focused YouTuber.
Yeah.
I watch a lot of camera and gear shows. I really like Gerald Undone, and
I was just going to ask that if you watched Gerald Undone.
yeah, I watch Gerald Undone
Yeah.
and DSLR video shooter Caleb Pike.
Caleb.
Yeah, who I joke about this a lot. I feel like he and I look like we could be related potentially.
I think so for sure. Yeah.
When it comes to like movies, I really like the Cosmonaut Variety Hour.
Oh, I've never heard of that one.
It's good. I mean, he's funny, and one of the things I like about him is he sounds like his voice and his sense of humor is very similar to somebody I worked with a long time ago. So I mean, like I watched him pretty early on, but now he's like enormous. Like he's like has like 1.5 million subscribers at this point. So
That's good though.
yeah, oh yeah. I mean, every year he will do like these marathon reviews of like different series. Like last year he reviewed like every single X-Men movie. I think this year he's like reviewing every Shrek movie. He's done like
So what does cosmonauts have to do with it then?
nothing. I don't think.
Okay.
It's just that's probably what he went with.
Yeah.
It's interesting though. You go back to his channel and he did like a lot of like game reviews and stuff, and like he doesn't really do it that much anymore. Although he occasionally does. But one thing I really appreciate is that every time he does a review of like a superhero movie, he like always uses music from X-Men versus Street Fighter in the background. I appreciate that consistency, and it's always like Rogue's theme. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So what about you? What do you got? I know that you got some good like audio centric stuff.
I do. Oh yeah, yeah. Okay. So my favorite audio channel to watch is Darko Audio, like Darko.
Is that a Donnie Darko reference, you think?
I don't know. Like he said, like early on, it was like the channel was called like John Darko, like if his name was John Darko, and then it switched to being called Darko Audio. But like, I don't know, is that like a real last name? If it is, that's cool. I wish
It's
my last
yeah.
name was Darko.
That's like a cool last name like Wolf.
Exactly. I was just talking to somebody about that yesterday because you and I had that conversation
Yeah.
because there was some other last name somebody had. And I was like, man, why can't I have like a last name like that? Because I actually work with a girl whose last name is Wolf.
Oh, okay.
So she's Swiss. Um, anyway, I like,
There's a kid in my son's class.
yeah,
His name is Wolf.
his first name.
His first name is Wolf.
Oh man, that's
So I
awesome.
feel like eventually, that kid's gonna love Pulp Fiction when he gets older. It's like, you're calling the Wolf?
Yeah. I used to work with a guy where that's what we all called him was the Wolf,
Yeah. I mean,
but it was
how can you not?
his last name was Loboshevsky. So because of the Lobo, we just called him the Wolf, which of course he loved. Who wouldn't want to be called the Wolf?
I mean, it makes you wonder if he was named Wolf because of Lobo, like the
Well, no,
logo in
no,
his
his
last name.
name was Eric. He was
Oh,
just,
okay.
but I'm saying we all called him the Wolf.
I see. So his name wasn't actually like straight up Wolf.
Right.
You called him Wolf because of Lobo in the
Yeah, it was just
original.
I used to work with this guy and like he and I just had nicknames for like everybody. Like we
Yeah.
didn't call any like if we called you by your real name, we didn't it means we didn't have any feelings about you one way or the other. Like if we hated you or we liked you a lot, you got a nickname. And if you were just sort of a non-factor, then we just called you whatever your name was, you
Yeah.
know. But yeah, anyway, I mean, I'm not sure what I don't I'm real like picky about what kind of YouTube content that I watch because I really have no interest in general in like anybody that sort of presents themselves as like an influencer, you know?
Yes.
And I just feel like, whether it's like musical gear or camera equipment or audio music, not musical gear but like music itself. There's like a fine line between doing, reviews and instructional videos, like I would say, like, Gerald Undone and DSLR Shooter both do,
Hmm.
like you watch those shows, I feel like you either learn something or, I want to know if I should buy, like one of these lights
You're
and
right.
I want an expert to explain it to me. And like, those are just guys that I trust to like,
Yeah.
but I feel like there's a lot of, I'm not going to name anybody or anything. I'm just going to say there's a lot of other channels where it just seems like you've got sort of this business set up where you've got these people sending you this stuff to review and you're pushing out the content. And I'm like, I don't, I have a pretty sensitive BS detector for that kind of stuff. So, but my all time favorite uh, YouTube channel, and I've talked about it before, but it's V Westlife.
Hmm.
And if you watch my Tandy 1000 video that I just did, that was basically me doing a video in the style of V Westlife. That's kind of why I did it. Like it was as an homage.
That's cool.
And I'm kind of ashamed to say this. The only other channel I can think of, I cannot remember the name of the channel, but it's this guy who it's like a cooking show, but it's like cooking from like colonial times. It's a very famous show. I just can't remember the guy's name all of a sudden.
Hmm.
Um, it doesn't really matter, but I mean, like he built a set. Like so, his dad, I guess, started some business selling equipment to like people who do like reenactments of like colonial times, or people that do like this is before, it's not like cosplay, but I guess you could call it cosplay now. But people like the Society for Creative Anachronisms and stuff like that. They would go have whatever like, and so he does videos about like, oh, here's how to build your own like clay oven and stuff, and he'll do that outside. But then like he built this whole set that was like, this is what a kitchen would have looked like in like 1795 or 1830 or something like that.
I mean, that's perfect for a
And
YouTube video, like content, because like people are not going to go out and do that themselves. It's like, I'll let someone else do the work and show me.
well, because it's like you can still cook the stuff that he's cooking. It's like you
Yeah.
don't have to cook it the way but it's like, do you own a Dutch oven? Like then you can still cook, what he's cooking. But he gives more like historical context to a lot of stuff, or he'll cook things that like nobody really cooks anymore. Like I remember he did this one video where because he's somehow gotten all of these like really old cookbooks from like the early 1800s, and some of them they reprint and he sells them in his store. But like you'll see recipes in there for stuff that, nobody makes now. And he did this one video, and it was like the recipe was just baked onions. And he
Oh,
was explaining, because you don't really think about it, but it's just like, if you were living like on the frontier or something, you were pretty limited.
yeah.
You couldn't just go to the store. And he's like, well, here's something, that, you might have had to make back in the day because it's just what you had. And it's, you literally, the recipe is take like a yellow onion, like a standard yellow onion, and put it in the oven and let it cook until it's soft. And then, you just peel it and put it in a bowl and put a little butter and some salt. And it was freaking delicious. If you like onions, I mean, because it's
Yeah.
a cooked onion, so it's like all sweet. It
Right.
doesn't have that like acidity or whatever to it anymore.
People, I
But I
think,
mean, that's just one example. But he's done, he does like, different kinds of soups and stews and breads.
yeah.
But he always puts it in a historical context is the point. It's not really just a cooking show. It's like, do you like history and you also like food?
Right.
So here's a show about the history of food, but we're also going to actually make the food and you can make it at home as well. But like I said, I cannot remember the name.
But we're not, we ain't
it's
looking it up.
it's no, I just remembered. It's Townsend's,
Townsend's.
like
Okay.
Townsends, because his last name is Townsend. His name is John Townsend.
Okay. That's that's another one of those
But like I said, I mean,
good
he's
last
got like
names.
over 1 million. So, I mean, it's a very famous show. So,
Yeah.
he's not getting a boost out of me today. Is what I'm saying. But yeah, I mean, those are the shows that like, popped into my mind
Yeah. I mean, I feel like
off the top of my head.
I don't watch a lot of like as much game stuff as I used to.
Yeah, me
Like, I
me
mean,
either.
like there's certain things like when it comes to like games and stuff that I like will always watch. And it's like more like informational, or they're
Yeah.
like friends.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I don't know, just like
So
my the amount of time that I have to consume content is like much smaller than and getting smaller every day, it feels like.
yeah, yeah. Our next question comes from Terry Lee. I won't give the last name, so I'll just say it's Terry Lee. And he says, here, dear, here's my question for you, AKA, see, we should have thought of this, AKA CNC Podcast Factory. Because CNC,
Oh,
Chris and
I see.
Corey.
Yeah, yeah,
Do you
yeah.
remember the band or whatever,
Yeah, yeah,
CNC Music Factory?
yeah, of
Wasn't that going to
course.
make you sweat? And
Yeah, yeah.
that was,
Make
I
my
might
music
actually have
video.
their album around here. Oh, that's right. Yes, on the Sega CD. All right. So, for what it's worth, I've been familiar with you both for years now. I really enjoy your content, and perhaps even more important than that, I just really like watching you both talk about that content or anything really. Being around the same age certainly helps because of all the shared interests and all that, but there's more to it than that. Kindred spirits and all. Lame, I know. I've really enjoyed your new podcast. I hope it continues. I hope this endeavor kicks butt and the snowball builds as big as you both would like. You guys both do a good job. So I don't know. I mean, if
Thank
we
you.
get more listeners slash viewers, that'd be cool. But I got to say, I'm already, I mean, we already got a pretty solid audience going. So I'm
Yeah.
already quite satisfied. If it
If
gets
we, if we if
bigger,
we have
then
a
great.
stack of emails, I think that's already pretty impressive.
Yeah. Well, so actually, it turns out I think this guy doesn't even have a question
Just wanted to.
because he said, "P.S. I'll happily send another message if I have something actually interesting to say or a question to post." And then actually, the PPS is saying this is not the kind of email to read on a podcast. Well, too late, Terry. We read your email on the show, so there you go. Next one comes from this is a YouTube channel called Cedar Valley Gaming. If I
Oh,
remember
okay.
correctly, the guy's name is Jason. We've traded emails in the past.
Hmm.
Oh, this is a good question. I feel like this is a better question. I don't know why I think that, but I think this is a better question for you. I would have
Okay.
to think about it a little bit more.
Okay.
He says, is there a song or album that is strongly associated with a specific event happening in your life?
Oh, I gotta think about it for a minute because
I just feel like you're more the kind of guy like, oh yeah, this girl dumped me and then I couldn't stop listening to, Mazzy Star or so. I don't know why I think I could see you doing that.
yeah.
You get dumped and then you go listen to Fade Into You like 100 times in a row.
Dude, I wouldn't just listen to that. Like the entire Among My Swans. Is it Among My Swan? Is that the album that might not be?
I
No,
I have no idea.
like the Among My Swan is like not the one with Fade Into You on it, but that's like it's a really good album.
Is it? I don't. I mean, I literally know nothing about Mazzy Star outside of that one song, so I don't. I
I
have
mean,
no
she was like,
opinion one way
I,
or
don't,
the other.
I think she was married to the. I don't remember who she was married to. Is it like the guy from Jesus and Mary Chain, maybe? And they have that. They did that song just like Honey, that was in Lost in Translation.
Yeah.
But I mean, just saying it's something that people would know. Um, Gosh, I mean, I like so many. Like I'm gonna regret like not having something like off the top of my head as soon as we're done recording this. I'm sure, but
Well, I mean, I would say if if you subsequently think of like a good one, like you should totally just bring it up.
yeah,
I mean, it's a
I
cool
will.
story. I
Let
mean,
me work on it because I feel like
yeah.
I'm sure that I have plenty of good albums for that or songs. I mean, like I have a lot of like tapes and stuff like that of things that I listened to when I was like maybe pining for somebody. But it's I mentioned before that I used to listen to like these random like mixtapes and stuff when I would mow the lawn. And like
Yeah.
it's one of my favorite things to do is like when it's like since having a house that has a lawn I can mow, I love to just like listen to music while or when I mow in the lawn. Sometimes podcasts, but I'm gonna have to think about that though. Like I'm sure there's plenty of albums that I listen to and like songs. I probably have entire playlists that I just cannot think of. Are you gonna write it down? Is that what you're doing?
No, I got issues going on over here. I don't know. I feel like I have like plenty of like songs or albums where it's like, you know, that came out at some like, certain point in my life or whatever. But, and so like I took a road trip here and was listening to a
Mm-hmm.
Metallica album the whole time or something. But like it's not an interesting story, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
It's just what I happened to be
it
listening to at that time.
it's weird. Like if it's albums that or songs that I like know of, I can a lot of times I can tell you about like where I was in my life when one of the times that I've heard it.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's hard to go like the other way. I guess it's certain like like hey, how about like Pearl Jam's 10. Like I can say like,
Hmm.
oh, I remember borrowing that CD and listening to it while I was playing through the game Lufia on the Super
Yeah.
NES. Like I would,
Yeah.
I just put that. I was just talking to somebody about like the first CD that we ever got because I was talking to our good friend Artemio Urbina, who was talking. We were talking about the Sega CD, about how that was like our first CD player.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, do you remember what your first CD that you got for it that wasn't like what was included?"
Yeah.
And I specifically remember that because it was REM's Out of Time that my brother got for me for Christmas, and I still have that. Like that is, you know, it's probably gonna be blasphemous to a lot of people, but uh, I keep all my CDs like in a book. Like I have donated the cases and the inserts to like a local record store because I decided. I mean, look at behind me. Like I decided a long time ago. Like I can only like really focus on collecting like one main thing. I can't just
Yeah.
like have a wall of CDs too and like a wall of movies. Like I just can't do it. So I decided like I'm gonna keep my CDs, but I'm just gonna put them in. I'm gonna put the discs in a book, and I'm going to take the cases and send them like to like a record store that can take them. Maybe they would get a CD in and they can swap it out if it's
So
like in
you
bad
you
shape.
didn't even keep the booklet.
No, I did not.
All right, that's to me that's the blasphemous part.
Okay, I understand that. I
Yeah.
understand that, but I just had to, like if I could go back in time, I'd probably like keep the booklet, but it's okay. Uh,
Yeah.
and because I just felt like these like the record store might be able to like look at like a disc only or like something that's like completely destroyed and they can swap it out with that. Like I'd happily like have it go towards something that is just helps somebody else out.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you didn't throw them out, you know.
But like REM's Out of Time, like I kept that case. I kept the entire complete thing because it's
Yeah,
like the first CD that I got.
yeah, that's pretty cool. All right, last one.
All
So
right.
actually, this didn't take that long. This is two questions. This is from Alan. He says, "I have two questions. I don't expect you to talk about either. Well, we're going to, so buckle up. But I got to get something in before you guys get so many that you stop taking them. Well, I don't know if that's ever going to happen.
That's not going to happen.
But all right. So question one: what do you guys think about baths? I'm generally not a person who cares about what people think of my manhood, but I generally keep the fact that I love a nice, relaxing bath to myself. You know, baths versus showers is what he's
Yeah.
saying.
Oh, I am 100% shower guy, like all the time.
Yeah.
Baths, I just feel like I could be doing something else with my time. I like to take like a long shower, and I do like a lot of like thinking of like working out like creative problems like when I'm in the shower.
Yeah.
But the bath is it's hot and then it slowly gets colder. And I like the hot
Well, yeah,
shower
you
because
got, I
it
mean,
just
you
like
got to keep,
stays.
yeah, I get that.
It's too much, but it's so much work, and I've probably taken like less than 10 baths in 25 years.
Well, what about when you were a kid? Were you big into,
Well, I mean, like sometimes, I guess, like when my brother's 4 years older than me, but there was a point in time where, like we were like within an age point where we like, we'd take a bath together
yeah,
and just
yeah,
like, like bring our like Matchbox toys and stuff
yeah,
like in there and stuff. But once
no.
that ended, I was just like, I like, I'm, I don't want to be like a little kid. Only little kids take baths. I don't want to do that anymore.
Well, that's kind of what he's saying, though, is like, maybe some people, are not. I'm not saying you're this way, but I'm saying I think his perception is that,
Like people think that
maybe,
only like little kids take baths.
or
And
girls, or whatever.
yeah, exactly. And I don't know, like I can appreciate that people could just like hang out and like lay in there for like several hours or like,
Yeah.
like listen to music. And
But you don't watch like the Big Lebowski, and there's the scene where like the dude's in the bath, before the nihilists come in with the marmot. Like
is that when he's
you
like
don't
using
see
the
that and be
roach
like,
clip?
man, that sounds.
He's
Well, I
like,
wasn't going to bring that up, because maybe people listen to our show with their kids, but yes, he was smoking a roach. I don't know. Doesn't that look appealing? Not the marmot and the, people
it
breaking
does,
his.
but I feel like the dude doesn't have
Yeah.
anything better to do with his time.
Yeah. But, we could all use a little more dude in our lives, I think.
Yes. I gotta say I love that movie. I love Big
Oh,
Lebowski.
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it is infinitely rewatchable. Another one of those infinitely rewatchable movies that and
Definitely.
every single time I watch it, I find something new that's funny.
Did I mention this before? I don't know if I said this before, but I did
Your
this with a
sweater's
couple
like
of.
pretty Lebowski-esque that you got on right now.
A little bit. I actually bought this sweater. I hate talking about this because if you're listening to the show, then you can't see the
Yeah, well,
sweater. But I actually bought this sweater because I was like, oh, I need a new Christmas sweater to wear on like the Christmas show, and so I bought this last year, and then I put it on, and I didn't like the way it looked really. Like I felt like it accentuated my fatness. But the thing is, it's so freaking comfortable that I'm just like, I don't really care anymore. It's such a comfortable shirt, but it doesn't button down the front like the dude's
yeah.
sweater would. But I can't remember if I mentioned this before or not, but because I did it with Napoleon Dynamite, to bring that up yet again, and Big Lebowski, where I downloaded the soundtrack,
Yes.
and then I also ripped the audio track off of the movie, and I would cut out like scenes that I like from the movie that made sense to just listen to. And I reordered the soundtrack so that the songs were in the order they appeared in the movie. And then I would put the audio from the movie in between the songs where it would fit.
That's that's amazing because I wonder if I mean that was a big thing for a while with like movie soundtracks. like they
Yeah.
would put like little sound bites from the movie like
Yeah.
in between.
But this was a lot of pretty big sound. It's almost like the audiobook version of them. Like if you're like driving somewhere, you can't watch Big Lebowski, but you can almost listen to it, but in a way where it's just like it's a cut down version of just like the scenes that will sound good to just
Yeah.
listen to, but then it will have the full versions of songs that appeared. You
Yeah.
know, like there's the scene with Jesus, where he's talking about. I'm not going to repeat what he said because it was extremely vulgar, but he's basically telling the dude and Walter and Donnie what he's going to do when they play each other.
Yeah.
And in the background is the Gypsy Kings version of Hotel
Hmm.
California, which is 100 times better than the Eagles version, which is not really that good. And so like I have that scene, of I can't remember the name of the actor that played Jesus, unfortunately,
Is it
but
John Turturro?
exactly. But then after that it plays the full song, so it was pretty
Right.
cool. But anyway, just to get back to Baz real quick, only because like when I was a kid, I was like all about, like, my mom would literally have to pull me out of the bathtub because like my skin was all, my
Yeah.
fingers and toes were all pruned up.
Yep.
Because like I would just stay in there all day if I could. Because like I would reach over and pull the plug and let some of the colder water out, turn the hot water spigot back on, and then I would sit in the middle of the tub while the hot water was coming out, and I would use one hand to like pull water towards me and the other hand to push water away from me on the other side to like mix up the water. And then when it got to the temperature I wanted, I would reach over and shut the tap back off. But like, I mean, I had toys in there with me and whatnot, so I just had a good old time.
Yeah.
And but another just sort of interesting thing about baths, obviously my wife and I don't have kids, and so I don't think this occurred to us that when we bought this house, it had been on the market for a little while, and I felt like the price was pretty decent, and we didn't really question it. It's like, I don't know, why is nobody buying this house? And so we bought the house, and we love this house. And it wasn't until after we lived here for a while that I think it really occurred to us that there's no bathtub. Like, we have
Yeah.
we have two bathrooms, but they're both dedicated showers. And so like if you were a parent, and you're like, well, I have small children and I want to buy this house, you would probably notice like, hey, where
Oh
there's no
yeah. Yeah.
bath, right? Like, how can you? I don't even know what you would do, right? If you had like a 2-year-old, 3-year-old or something, and you lived in a house with no bathtub, like, I don't know, I guess fill up the sink or something. That'd be kind of
Yeah. Well, I
strange,
mean, we
but
gave like when my kids were small enough, like the house that we owned before this had a really big sink, and they would occasionally take sink baths. It was
yeah.
like that big of a sink. It didn't have any divider in it, so it was big enough
Oh, like
for
what they
it.
call that, like a farmhouse sink, I think.
Yeah, yeah, it was
Yeah.
like that. But I think the last time I took a bath was, I mean, not. It was just like less than 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Uh, so I have this thing like with called Raynaud's syndrome, where like I have bad circulation into my feet or into my like fingers and my toes.
Hmm.
So they get like really, really cold when it's cold out. And
Yeah. So wouldn't
uh,
you want to take a bath then?
well, the old house, it is like 140 years old. So it the floor got really like the hardwood floors would get really, really cold.
Hmm.
And when this started really kicking in, I would sometimes I had to stop walking around bare feet because my feet would just get completely like white.
Wow.
Like there was like no blood flow. So I had to go as like I would take baths to like get that circulation going again. And
Yeah.
my feet would like turn like blue. Like my toes would like turn like bluish purple. And there was a time, I mean, that's when I was taking baths. It's like I would just, you know, get in the bath because I didn't have any other choice. It just
Yeah.
like I needed to.
So maybe you kind of have a negative association.
Yeah, yeah, I could see
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't, there are times when I definitely miss having, like, if I'm sick
Hmm.
or, if I'm sore for some reason, where it's like, oh man, I could just like lay in a bath, like
Yeah,
I would love to have like a hot tub in the backyard, for that reason.
Yeah. I
But
mean, yeah, that would be amazing to have, right? Just the hot tub.
yeah, but really, that's not that much different than a bath. Like you
Yeah.
can't say like, oh, I can't take a bath because I have things to do, but it would be awesome to have a hot tub. In my
Yeah.
opinion, you're
Yeah. I mean, hot tubs are
conflicting.
amazing, even though
Yeah,
you can't overdo it with hot tubs, like make you feel like nauseous. It like, makes me feel nauseous after a while.
really, because of the heat.
Yeah, I
Hmm.
think.
Yes.
But yeah, I was gonna say something, but I forgot. I lost it.
So Alan also says that this show needs more Elsie the cow. So I
What?
don't know if
Who's
first
that?
of all, Alan, it's Elsie the Borden cow, not Elsie the cow. So get it,
I'm
have some
lost.
respect for Elsie. So I don't know if like lately when I do like videos where I'm upstairs and I'm just standing in front of the camera,
Yeah.
like over my left
Oh,
shoulder, there's a framed picture of a cow. That's Elsie the Borden cow.
okay.
Um, so I mean, I could put it like, if I took down some of this beer signage, we could stick Elsie down here. It would be nice to have her, watching over us,
Yeah.
making
I
sure
mean,
that
I
we're
need to. Maybe
having
I
a good
gotta. I
show.
should put something like right here. I got. Well,
Something.
I got.
What is that?
It's
Oh, it's a
Gallion
lunar.
from Lunar. Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Oh man. Uh, um, just because we're talking about hanging stuff on the wall, So, I gave you that gold record,
Yeah.
and I was like, that thing's kind of cool. I kind of want one of those. And but of a band that I want, like I don't really want, no offense, I don't really need an REM, whatever. Um, and somebody on eBay was selling a gold record of Postal Service,
Oh.
and that's one of my all-time favorite albums.
Yeah.
But it wasn't buy it now, it was just, whatever, like normal auction.
Hmm.
And so I had it on my watch list and I was like, oh yeah, it was ending on Black Friday. And I was like, oh, cool. Like that's a bad time. Like you always look out. I mean, not so much anymore because like 90% of what's on eBay is like buy it now.
Yes.
But, back when it was mostly auctions, that's one of the things you'd pay attention to. Like, oh, this auction is ending at a really bad time for the seller, right?
Yeah.
Like nobody's going to be sitting, on eBay at,
Hmm.
whatever time you have your auction ending. And so I thought like, ooh, ending on Black Friday, it's going to be awesome. And like the bid was like $120 or something. I was like, well, it's, I mean, it's a gold record, right?
Yeah.
And, but then it was going to end on Friday. And then I forgot, like I set like a timer on my iPad
Hmm.
instead of my phone because I'm stupid. And so like my iPad was in a different room. And so the timer went off and I never heard it. And so I missed the end of the auction. And I was kind of not mad, but I was like, oh man, I was disappointed a little bit because I'd already told my wife about it because she loves that album too. And so
Yeah.
she's like, oh yeah, we should get that. We could hang it on the wall, like above our stereo. And, so then I told her the next day, I was like, oh yeah, that we're not getting that record. Like, oh, what happened? And so I just told her, I said, well, I forgot about, I just told her the story I told you. I said, I didn't check it. So I missed the end of the auction. And I was kind of a little bit peeved at myself about that. But then I went and looked up how much it sold for. And like, we weren't going to get that anyway. So, cause it sold for like about $400,
Oh yeah. I mean, that's.
which I'm not saying that's out of line. Like, I can't believe that some gold records are as cheap as they are. Like considering
Yeah.
there's not that many of them out there. Like to me, any gold record, if it's a decent album should, or if it's from a
Hmm.
major band, should sell for more than what I see a lot of them selling for.
Yeah.
So, I wasn't surprised it sold for that much, but at the same time, like I told my wife, it's like you're buying somebody else's trophy, you know?
Yeah. I mean, you are.
But I mean, at the same time, like if you could have, if it was like well, that's a mean thing to say. I was going to say, well, I didn't mean it to be mean, but I was going to say if you had like a Buffalo Bills player's Super Bowl ring, but that doesn't exist. But I'm saying like, just whatever. I'm saying like some
It
sport,
might though. It
some
might
team that you
eventually, like
like,
soon.
uh, those things are collectible, right? Because
Yeah.
it's not very often that like a Super Bowl ring ends up on the market, but at the end of the day, you're still buying, the acknowledgement of somebody else's achievement.
Yes.
So
And it's doubly cool when it's something that you like. Like, hey, this thing sold
exactly,
a lot of copies, and like I have like a commemoration that somebody else
yeah,
got for the
Yeah.
the fact that sold a whole bunch of copies, and that's like
Yes.
that is one of those situations like where it's kind of unbelievable to me that they never made another one. Like I know they did like some songs though, didn't they? Like songs that were not on that.
Did they? I don't even know about that.
Because like the thing is like the situation in making that album could not be replicated. Now, I mean they could, but it wouldn't.
It would be you're doing it on purpose instead of it just being what naturally occurred.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. The other reason I wasn't as interested in it, though, I'll say that I was less excited about it. You know, like your gold record it's like a Robert Brown or something. I don't know. We don't even know who that is.
Right.
Um,
And it's such a
the
generic
the
name that it'd be impossible to find out who it is.
yeah, it almost sounds made up. But the Postal Service gold record was for Best Buy.
Oh, well,
It was kind of like, that's not that. That's less exciting. I mean, I'm not a
Yeah.
huge fan of Best Buy anyway, but if it had been any like chain store, it's like, but then that makes me wonder, how did that end up out on the market? Like, did somebody steal that from like the Best Buy corporate office or something?
maybe
That'd be kind of cool.
someone is like that was like their thing that they did when they took it when they were when they quit.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Anyway, that's it. I got nothing else.
All right. Well, it's a good time. I gotta go get my son from
Yes.
school. My daughter actually is home from school. Like we think
Oh yeah.
the flu's going around like crazy,
Yeah.
and she might like be in the beginning stages of it. I'm surprised she didn't come down here during this.
Do they still think I live on a submarine or not anymore?
I mean, I may have told them that you don't, but I doubt they remember
Why
me.
would you do that?
I don't know. Like I think they asked some specific question that like I just couldn't answer.
You should show them that movie, A Life Aquatic, with Steve Zissou,
Oh, okay.
and tell them that like that's like where I live on
That's what
something
you do.
like that.
Well, you'd have to get like next time they see you, you'd have to like wear an orange hat. The kind of like would match the shirt that you have underneath that.
Well, this is actually a red, but I agree that in this lighting, for some reason, it looks orange. Yeah. All right, so I think that's going to do it then for episode 8.
Heck yeah. We're moving.
Are you getting nervous? Now we're 2 episodes away from episode 10, and remember, you said that if we got to 10 episodes, you would do a show without your shirt on, because you were so convinced that we'd never make it to 10.
I didn't say that.
Yeah. And I remember, because I even said, like, are you sure? Because it'll be in the middle of winter. Like, do you really want to do a topless episode in the middle of winter? You're going to have like 2 diamond cutters down there.
I know.
And
Well,
you're like,
I'm going to wear some.
I'm not worried about it.
I'm going to put some tassels on them.
Oh, God. All right. Anyway, that's going to do it for this episode of Here's My Question for You. If you'd like to send in a question and have it read on the show, you can send it to here'smypodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on social media, but I'll be honest and say I haven't done anything with the Twitter or Instagram account lately. So
they exist, and you never know what might show up there.
I didn't even post a clip this week for the show because, like, I feel like no one's really paying attention to that anyway. So it's just better to just focus on the show itself, I think.
Yeah. It feels like we're being silenced on social media, so we stopped posting.
Okay, I don't know about that. But, I don't think there's a conspiracy against us.
All right. Till next time.
Yep. Thanks for listening.